everybody, it's Michelle again. We started on Hocus Pocus Hotel, The Wizard and the Wormhole. Okay, we got to about midway of chapter 5, and here was the picture of DeVille and the boys, and they're looking at a trap doorway. Okay. Joey swung the camera up at the tall boy. "Yeah, that's right," answered Ty. "It's just for fun. This is a trick door made by Abracadabra when he built the hotel. It's just sort of a joke." "Or perhaps a challenge to other magicians," said DeVille. "And what is at the end of this hallway on the other side of the glass?" "It connects to the other hallway," said Ty, "but you have to walk all the way around to reach it." DeVille nodded. "Would you be so kind as to stand at the other end of that hallway?" he asked. "You shall be on guard. Make sure no one gets in or out of the hallway." Tyler looked at Charlie and shrugged. "Okay, fine," he said. Then he took off. DeVille spoke to the camera. "There is no one up here except myself and these 3 witnesses, ladies and gentlemen," he said. "I checked with the hotel staff, and no one is in any of the rooms on this floor. All the doors are locked. But," he pulled a long yellow ribbon from his coat, "someone is invisible and is in here with us." "A ghost?" thought Charlie. "The spirit of Dragonstone," said DeVille, as if answering the boy's thoughts. "He is in that mysterious hallway, unable to reach us through the solid glass door. But by using this ribbon, which I obtained from my brother wizards in Kathmandu, I shall open the mystic wormhole and rescue the invisible Dragonstone." DeVille rolled up a piece of the ribbon and then stuffed it through the tiny keyhole, where it cascaded in a long strand down the other side. "I shall hold this then," said the magician, keeping a firm hold on the ribbon. Next, DeVille rolled a metal frame in front of the glass door. The magician pulled down black curtains on the frame, effectively screening the glass door from the viewer's eyes. But the ribbon passed through the curtains. DeVille stood just outside the frame where Joey's camera could still see him. One end of the ribbon still is in his hand. "Watch the ribbon," said DeVille. "I shall put it back through the keyhole and onto this side of the solid glass door." Slowly, ever so slowly, the dark-haired magician pulled the yellow ribbon through the black curtains. It kept on coming. "What's the big deal?" thought Charlie. "He's just pulling the ribbon back through the keyhole. Why won't he let us watch it happen?" "Hey!" shouted Joey. The ribbon stopped. DeVille held it in both his hands now, and Charlie could see that the ribbon wasn't coming any further. It must have caught on something. "How could it be stuck?" asked DeVille. "The keyhole is smooth, and there is nothing between it and the curtains. Perhaps it has found something in the wormhole." Charlie felt a glowing coldness along his spine. "Mr. Hitchcock," said DeVille, "would you be so kind as to pull the curtains open for our audience?" Charlie walked over, grabbed a curtain, and yanked it aside. Joey almost dropped his camera. In front of them, on the same side of the glass door as them and DeVille, stood the red-headed Dragonstone, with the yellow silk ribbon tied around his waist. Chapter 6. The Third Disappearance. David Dragonstone bowed to the camera. "Thank you, Monsieur DeVille," he said, smiling, "for rescuing me from the beyond, and thank you, everyone, for coming to this afternoon's premiere." DeVille reached over and snapped off the camera. "Magnificent," said DeVille, clapping the other magician on the back. "What's going on?" came a voice. Tyler ran up to the glass door from the other side. His eyes grew wide as he saw Dragonstone. "Hey, how did he get over there?" "Through a wormhole," said Joey. Charlie noticed a worried look on the red-headed man's face. But DeVille gave him a reassuring look. "Don't worry," said DeVille. "That young man in the elegant t-shirt and jeans is another volunteer. He was making sure no one could enter from the far end." "Ah, thank you for your assistance," Dragonstone said to Tyler. Turning to DeVille, he added, "We should return to the stage." "But how did you get here?" asked Joey. "You weren't inside that flimsy frame. You couldn't hide inside of a curtain." "There was no one in the hallway when I got to the other side," said Tyler. "Wizardry," said DeVille with a wave of his hand. The magicians walked off, followed by a chattering Joey, trying to get a scoop for his paper. "I can see the headline now," said Joey. "The hair-raising Houdini of the Hocus Pocus Hotel." "Young man," came the dwindling voice of the retreating wizard, "it's the Abracadabra, if you don't mind." Tyler and Charlie stared at one another through the solid glass door. "How'd he do it, Hitch?" asked Tyler. Both boys felt the smooth glass. It was solid, and the keyhole was clearly too small for anyone to pass through. "You didn't see anything over there?" asked Charlie. "Nothing," said Ty, "and that hall is long. I could barely see the black curtain come down from the other door, but I did hear a funny noise." "Funny?" "Like a thump or someone jumping." Tyler shook his head as if to clear it. "I'm just glad this stupid show is over. Meet me at the elevators and we'll head up to Brack's." Charlie ran back to the elevators. On the way, he glanced at a wallpaper in the hall. It was covered with prints of fancy-looking flowers. Tiger lilies? No, they looked more like roses. Here is Charlie and Ty looking through this glass frame, trying to figure out what the magicians did. All right. The hall with the elevators was quiet. The two magicians and Joey must have already gone back to the theater. As Charlie stood and waited for Ty, he thought back to the amazing illusion he had just witnessed. How did Dragonstone appear? Had he been hiding somewhere in that hallway? Even if he was, how did he pass through the solid glass door? Joey had been right. No one could have hidden in that frame or curtains. Dragonstone must have come from the other side of the glass. But how? And what was taking Ty so long? "Ty!" shouted Charlie. He felt as if he were standing inside Brack's empty house again. No answer. Charlie listened but didn't hear any approaching footsteps. "Ty!" he called. Charlie ran down several halls, hoping he was going in the direction of the blocked hallway. He could just make out the curtains that had been left on the other side of the glass door. This was the place. So where was Tyler? They should have run into each other. Charlie called a few more times but heard nothing. He started to sweat. Something was wrong. Charlie ran back to the elevators. Still no Tyler. He waited a few more minutes. He shouted one last time. Then he pushed the button to call an elevator and descend to the main floor, alone. Chapter 7. Beard and Moustache. Charlie passed through crowds of people streaming through the lobby as they exited the theater. They were heading toward the front doors, where they opened umbrellas to face the pouring rain, or waved their arms for honking taxicabs. When Charlie reached the front desk, he was disappointed not to see Tyler. He was surprised to see Annie, though. Her familiar face was twisted into a frown. "Where have you been?" she said. "Where's Tyler?" "I don't know," said Charlie. "I thought he was down here." "Well, he's not," she said, "and I had to figure out those lights all by myself. The audience was in the dark for 10 minutes. "He told me to meet him at the elevators, but he never showed up," said Charlie. "Wait a minute. Tyler said something else before I left him," thought Charlie. Something that didn't make any sense at the time. "Typical," said Annie, folding her arms. She looked back at the front desk, where another young woman with thick dark hair was frantically helping 5 customers at the same time. "I have to get to work," she said. "Wait," said Charlie. "I think Tyler disappeared." "Of course he did," said Annie, walking away. "I mean, disappeared." Annie stopped in mid-strike. She turned to look at Charlie. "You mean like Brack?" "I'm worried," said Charlie. "After everything happened, Ty and I were supposed to meet back at the elevators. Like I said, he never showed up. Then I ran around all the halls, but I didn't see him." "I hope he's not hurt," Annie said. "Was DeVille right?" asked Charlie. "There's no one on that floor?" Annie nodded. "And all the doors are locked." She shook her head. Poor Tyler." "Annie!" The girl at the desk looked upset. "I'll be right there," Cosette called Annie. "But we need to find Ty," said Charlie. "And Brack." Annie stepped toward Charlie and grabbed his hand. Suddenly she looked very serious. Annie spoke in a low tone. Her lips moved close to his ear. She whispered, "Meet me on the 12th floor in 10 minutes. We'll look for them together." Then she stood up and hurried back to the desk. As she walked away, Charlie noticed that he was holding something in his hand. "She was just giving me a key." It was a pass key to all the rooms in the hotel. Instead of going to the 12th floor, Charlie headed backstage. He remembered the hunk of red hair from Brack's carpet. He was sure it had something to do with the red-headed David Dragonstone. In the theater, men and women were moving props, sweeping the stage, and guiding racks of costumes through the workspace. All the lights were on. "Excuse me," said Charlie to a woman walking past with a case full of snakes. "Can you tell me where the magicians are?" The woman used the case to point. "The dressing room's over that way," she said. "Thanks," Charlie said. "Hey, are those real snakes?" "Maybe," the woman said, smiling. Charlie rushed over to the dressing room. It was locked. He put his ear to the door and heard nothing inside. Making sure no one was watching him, he used the passkey and let himself in. Then he groped for a light switch near the door. When the lights came on, Charlie found himself in a long, narrow room with a row of mirrors along one wall. In front of the mirrors ran a low counter and several chairs. Plastic containers sat on the counter. Opening them, Charlie saw pencils, brushes, sponges, and tubes of different colors of makeup. Turbans and top hats hung from hooks on the walls, along with capes, several straitjackets, and an undersea diver's outfit. Closets stood at each end of the room. Charlie searched through those as well. He wasn't exactly sure what he was looking for, but he knew he had to start somewhere. "I found the red hair when I wasn't expecting it," he thought. "So if I just keep looking, maybe—" Then he saw it, hanging on a hook at the back of one of the closets. A fake beard and mustache, both made of red hair. A section of hair on one side of the beard was missing. Charlie pulled up the red hair from his pocket and held it up to the beard. A perfect match. So Dragonstone had been upstairs talking to Brack. But how did the hair end up on the floor? Did Brack pull it off the man's face? Was there a struggle? Charlie grew more and more worried about the missing magician and Ty. "I've got to find them," he thought. Charlie stuffed the beard into his backpack. He was backing out of the closet when he heard a noise. Someone was unlocking the door. He pushed through the costumes toward the back of the closet. He flattened up against the wall and slid behind a dark furry robe that looked like a bear's skin. Something scraped at his side, and he almost gasped. In the dim light that filtered into the closet from the dressing room, he saw what had been making the scraping sound. A rolled-up piece of blue paper leaned against the wall. On the upper edge, he saw an official-looking stamp. Land Register, Blackstone County. Like the one in Brack's house, thought Charlie. It was too much of a coincidence that the young magician's closet held 2 items from the home of the missing abracadabra. As quietly and quickly as he could, Charlie slipped the paper roll into his backpack. The door to the dressing room was opening. Charlie heard footsteps, a small thud, and someone breathing. Then everything went black. The lights had snapped off. Slowly, the door squeaked shut, and he heard the lock click. So, here's Charlie inside this closet, hiding from whoever it is that came into the room. And he's found this blue thing, and he's stuffing it in his backpack. Charlie hated the dark. It was the one thing that truly terrified him. He wasn't bothered by heights or spiders or snakes or even tight spaces. In the light, at least, you could see those things, but in the dark, you were never sure what was there. Was someone still in the room with him? Charlie held his breath. Then he counted to 100. When he still heard nothing from the dressing room, he silently shuffled out of the closet. Moving through the hanging clothes in the darkness felt like walking through a crowd of people or through thick black curtains. Black curtains! That's what Ty had said upstairs. Something about DeVille's curtains that didn't sound right. Charlie slid his hands gently along the wall. He felt the door frame and then the knob. He turned the knob and then pulled the door open. The lights from the stage were almost blinding. Then he saw, on the counter by the mirror, a huge face that hadn't been there before. It held a dozen roses and a small card. He reached over and read the card. "Congratulations on your preview. Magnifique, the Div..." Charlie sighed relief. The unseen footsteps hadn't been looking for him. They had simply dropped off the flowers. But what an odd way to sign your name. The Div. Charlie replaced the card, closed the door, and hurried back to the elevators to show Annie what he had found. All right, next is Chapter 8, called The Stairs Between. And Charlie, I'm sure, is going to try to figure out what's going on and find his magician friends and Ty. All right, so tomorrow I'll read Chapter 8. All right.